hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Entering the Creative Unknown. And today, my friend and one of my favorite artists of all time, Diem Dangers, is in the room. And she is going to talk to us about her process. And I just have to say, before I read her artist statement, that what I love about ZM's work is that it's very full. It feels like you're walking through somebody's pregnancy and birth. And I just love her process and her work so much. And I'm so excited that you're here today with me.
Thank you so
So,
much.
before we begin, I'm just going to read your artist statement and I'm going to read it in your voice instead of changing it to she and her. So, my name is Diem Dangers. I am a printmaker and folklorist. Through my work, I bring together two ancient crafts. Stories once carried by voice are now carved by hand. Working primarily with sustainable materials, I carve and print each piece entirely by hand, pressing original folktale inspired designs onto handmade paper is a quiet ritual shaped by the wild feminine in the mythologies of many cultures. My work is deeply inspired by the work of Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes in her book Women Who Run with the Wolves. And in a similar way, I offer many faces of the wild woman archetype. Those fierce and tender figures who appear across traditions as goddesses, healers, dreamers, witches, maidens, mothers, and crones. Rustic and timeless, my handcrafted prints are a sacred honoring of the feral woman wisdom. They offer an invitation to reclaim the wild, instinctual self and to restore our kinship with the earth, with one another, and with the untamed that still lives within us. So, right there, I'm already so completely moved. So, what I love about your work is, well, I already said that I love the fullness of it, but you really do feel, well, first of all, you provide the story, but you really do feel all of the layers of stories in your visual work. And do you want to talk a little bit about how, first of all, how you came to what you do and how you come into what you do?
So, I think so much of what I do is really comes from my own personal history and experience. Tapping into stories or depending on them, or I think stories is too narrow. Maybe it's more like the mythic imagination, the imaginative realm, as a way of surviving my own life. So um, I often find myself going there if I'm having a really tough time in multiple ways in my life. And so I think what I'm trying to do in my shop and in my work is to honor the stories that have kept me afloat. And because I think actually perhaps others might also feel the same way or might draw some kind of energy and sustenance from the storied realm as a way of coping, but more than just coping, surviving, thriving in the world. It's almost like um, yeah, I'm tapping into that imaginative realm as a way of honoring how I've lived my life so far. So
I think that's I think what's so beautiful about it is that it's so much more than, and I really identify with the survival aspect, but for me, your work and the work of Clarissa Pinkola Estes and so many more storytellers is it makes me feel like I am living and I am valid. Like I am part of the fabric and such an important part of the fabric.
mhm.
Um, and I really love that you're sharing about that because I think it's so important, especially right now, that we really feel our presence and our validity as women.
Yeah.
Um,
That's for sure.
and how important we are.
Hmm.
So how did you get into, so tell a little bit about, because I really had never heard of this way of doing print work before. It's very new to me. So tell me how you select what story you're going to be, do you know how it's going to look? How do you select a story? How does the piece speak to you before it actually comes into any kind of form?
Um, so I think it comes in different ways through different windows and doors. Sometimes it's the story itself that speaks to me. So um, I love the book Women Who Run with the Wolves. And so, for example, the Selkie story really resonated with me, and that is what inspired me to do that piece. But sometimes I might find something from nature that I actually tangibly, physically experience. So maybe I'll go out on a hike and I'll come across a goose feather or something like that, and I'll want to make some meaning out of it. And I feel like there's more to it than just what the feather itself. There's something about nature that's speaking to me. Let's go discover more about what feathers mean, either in this landscape or um, folkloric wise in many different landscapes. I've lived in many landscapes myself, so often I'm drawing from these different locations, the stories from the different locations, and then it'll just build upon that. Um, Sometimes I'll be sketching something, kind of like in your dream workshops where I'm just sort of playing around with images and some kind of symbols speak to me more, and then I realize, oh yeah, this is kind of a symbol of an egg. I'm often drawing eggs, and so I'll sort of build upon that and look into egg folklore or egg stories and mythologies, and then it'll become interesting for me because it'll sort of help me better understand why I'm so drawn to eggs. And then from that place, a design kind of evolves from that. So,
Is there a crossover for you on, so if you come across a feather or if you come across a bone of some sort or whatever it might be, I know that like you are so rooted in story, but do you also become an investigator in other ways? Like, do you start to look into biology and
yes, yes, definitely. I think there's so much connection between, storytelling and the landscape ecologies. There's so many echoes and parallels between the stories that nature is telling and the stories that we tell as human beings, and also histories and sociologies, cultures. Um, it's all a web um, that feeds off each other, and I think so much of that integration is incorporated in so many of my blog posts when I talk about not just the stories, but how they mean in relationship to the actual animals that are featured in the stories, that kind of thing. So,
it's amazing that you are creating this web, and the more we look into, again, you're talking about building a relationship with something that you're giving honor and validity to. So it's the animals, it's the story, it's the women who came before us, it's the tree, it's the soil, it's the whole experience. And when you really start to slow down, I mean, this is something that I'm learning in my own practices, and I'll say this sometimes after I teach like a yoga class, it's just yoga and it seems so corny, but I'll say like we really are all connected. Like that never
yeah.
stops being incredible, including the presentation of something as simple as like, I don't know, like if I teach an essential oils class and I'm talking about ginger oil, and I'll ask people what they think like the emotional aspect is of ginger oil. And they'll be like, well, I don't know. And I'll say, like, well, what's the physical effect of ginger oil? And they'll be like, well, digestion. And I said, okay, well, what if you move that over? How is it? And then people like say, well, maybe when I'm like mulling something over, or, it's pretty amazing how things work. So when you do you ever get, well, first of all, do you ever get stuck where you don't know what to do?
Um, Strangely, I don't.
Yeah, I feel like I was just to say, I was just like in my mind, I was like, I bet she doesn't.
I think mostly it's like I have too much and I'm like having to choose between, okay, I can't do everything. I've got to just do this or I'm focusing on that tends to be my problem is, yeah.
Well, I think that's because of the wholeness of your process. It's not just one thing. So first of all, you're channeling. Do you feel like you're channeling?
I guess I suppose I must be, but I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot. So yes, I think some people might call it channeling. Um, yeah, maybe.
I feel like it is. I feel like you're channeling all of those wild voices that came before us, when you are somebody that feels like the bones beneath the soil. It's vibrating through your whole body all the time. What can you do?
Oh yeah, for sure. I have like so many voices. Yes, I have a lot going on. Yes, but
So let's just talk about the process itself. And oops, wrong glasses. I've got 40 pairs here. I'm going to put up just a photo, this first photo of the slideshow. So, oops, are
mm,
you just seeing the slide here? There we
I
go.
can see
Okay.
it. Uh-huh.
All right. So, can you talk a little bit about, for those of us who don't know, what is this process that we're seeing right now?
Yeah, so this is one of the first stages of lino cut printmaking, where I've created a design on a piece of artist's linoleum, and then I start to carve it out. It's about the same consistency as rubber, but maybe a little tougher. And so there in those pictures, I'm starting to carve out the parts that I don't want any paint to cover, so they're going to be white, and then the parts that are left over are the parts that will have ink spread on them, and it'll
Wow.
show up as an inked part. Yeah.
I mean, I can hardly carve a pumpkin because I get so confused with negative space. It's really difficult for me to think that way. So I find this so incredible that you can do this, decide what you don't want
Oh.
to have paint on. So do you sketch directly on this, or how does that work?
Yeah, I might do a couple of sketches on a piece of paper and get the rough idea, but still, at the point where I'm putting pencil onto the linoleum block, I'm still hashing it out. And even, a lot of people don't do this, but even after I've started carving, I might still be designing. I might still figure something out as I carve. Um,
And then do, so when you do, does this feel tedious to you?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. In fact, the carving part isn't really my favorite part of it. I think that my favorite part is really the designing, coming up with the inspiration, and because I have so many ideas, that's the fun part. And then the carving is kind of like, oh, I'm kind of doing this, but
Yeah.
um, but once it's carved, then it's exciting again. Then I get to print it and see what it looks like, and so.
And it's amazing that it still lives. So after you do this process of, I'm going to see if I can change the slide from here. After you do this process of carving, hold on, there we go.
Mm,
So this piece, the pieces, they still live. They live over and over and over again, right? They can take on different color. They can take
mhm.
on different. So talk a little bit about that process of how you. I don't. This is so beautiful. What's your favorite color to work with? Do you have a
Yeah,
favorite?
Yeah, I love the sort of Prussian blue, kind of dark blue, gray color. For some reason, that appeals to me. Even if I'm doing watercolors or something, for some reason that color always turns up. I'm not sure what that means, but black is also a fun one with lino cuts, just because it's so bold, and then the contrast between the lights and darks um, kind of bring that out. But, to be very honest, I still feel like a beginner. I still feel like a beginner. I really do. I feel like I'm still learning stuff as I go. I'm fumbling around. Honestly, that was one of my first prints, and I can't believe how big I made it. I still feel like at that point I wasn't even thinking of size, or how's this going to fit into somebody's place. I was just thinking, how am I going to get this done? And now, of course, with a little more experience, I'm better at figuring out that, but still, there's so much to it that every day is a new learning. I feel like I'm still learning, and even the whole printmaking process of trying to get the ink down properly, it's really finicky, and it's not easy. It looks easier than it is, actually.
Yeah, it looks like it would just be
Yeah.
like you just roll it on, you put the
Right.
paper on, and you peel it off.
Yeah, it
That's
looks like it's just one, but something like that, especially that big, it takes at least 7 to 10 layers of ink
wow.
to get
Do you have
to
to
get it
dry in between
consistent.
each and you
No, you don't
dry
have to
it?
no, you don't have to dry it, but the consistency is never really that. It's never always consistent. So you're kind of having to roll it in places that it didn't get onto before. And then even after I print, I still go over it with a paintbrush. Little parts that never got their way in, I go in and work on those details. And so each piece actually takes much longer than it seems on an Instagram reel. So,
Yeah. So when you place the piece down, you
mhm.
ink the
The
block. What do you
block.
call it? A
Mhm.
block? Okay.
The
You
cardboard.
ink the block and then you put the are you making your own paper too?
No, 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 no. I
Okay.
buy the.
Okay. So you put it on top and then do you weight it? Do you do something over it or do you just smooth it?
Yeah, I have to press down really hard. So I have a small printmaker which does some kind of it for me, but it's only for smaller prints, 8 by 10. Anything larger than that, I have to do it by hand, and it takes a lot of effort, and it's actually quite tiring. So I can only do maybe, 10, 15 of those big prints a day. And then it's not just physically exhausting, but it's because it requires a lot of patience to sort of redo layers. Um, it can just be mentally tiring. So yes, I have to put a lot of pressure on the different parts of the print to make sure it all gets down properly.
So your pieces are, I mean, I'm going to move on to some more pieces in a moment, but your pieces, in my experience, so many of them, we've talked about this before, I feel like you are always drawing or creating an incubating space. There's always the presence of a womb, of an egg, of something wrapped in. And do you want to talk a little bit about that?
That's so interesting you mentioned that. I didn't think of that for all of them, but now that you mention that, you're right. Huh. I had never thought of that before. I always love to put, the landscape inside a body. Because those, I don't even know how to pronounce it, but those Russian, I think they're called Marishka dolls, where
Like
like
the
the
nesting
dolls,
dolls?
yes, the nesting dolls. I love that concept. And how it translates into stories like, the Arabian Nights, where there's a story within a story within a story. And that concept, really resonates because I think oftentimes in our modern world we tell very simplistic black and white stories, but with the nesting dolls and the nesting stories concept, um, I think they sort of capture more realistically how people's lives actually are. Recently, my father died, and in grieving him, I discovered parts of his life that I didn't realize before. In many ways, they were kind of like a nesting doll where, it was completely encapsulated, hidden from me. But they come out into visibility at different points. And I think everybody has some kind of story like that in their own life. Um, it just adds a complexity to the telling of a story and the real lived experience of a story. And I think by capturing it visually, as in this Baba Yaga picture, I think hopefully people might resonate with that level of complexity of storytelling. Um, yeah,
I definitely do.
so
I
glad.
said those of you who don't know, I mean, you obviously wouldn't know our private conversations, but I sent Ziema an email last night, said that I was like tearing up when I was looking at her work. And it's just, I think because you've really, like I said earlier, I feel very much validated by, and I might not know what it is. I don't know what it is, but there's something about the work and the stories, like honoring the stories, that it's just like, oh my gosh, like I feel just so seen. And I think that is actually that wrapping quality that your work has. I feel wrapped in it when
Oh, so
I'm
touched.
looking at it. And this, I just wanted to show this photo because you can really see how intricate the carving is. And this is so, I would be tempted to just hang the actual block itself. The block is so cool. I mean, this is so
Yeah.
amazing. Have you ever done, do you ever create carved pieces that are just pieces, carved pieces?
I don't. And this is the thing is once I've inked it once, it does that's the first inking and it will never look like that again. So if you see all my blocks now, they're really full of ink. I mean, they don't look that beautiful at all. So that's just the first layer of ink over them. But I think what you're talking about is the value of the carved block itself. And I think there's something to it, though. Um, I did this a little bit of very, very little a bit of research into the ancient craft of printmaking in China, and it turns out that the actual block that was carved was equally valued. And originally, printmakers were making sacred texts, prints of sacred texts, like the Buddha's sayings and all this stuff. And so I thought, I think there's something to, um, I think there's something to that, to the actual carving holding some kind of weight in terms of the spirit that's imparted to the paper or something like that.
Well, and it's a physical, I mean, I guess most art is a physical process, but there's something about the carving that feels it's almost like the artist is an element, like water carving stone, or there's something about it that feels like um sort of reenacting this ritual of creating through friction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Or I don't know if that's the right word, but there's something about it that just feels so, even though it's an unnatural process in terms of how a piece is getting formed, it's also the most natural thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love
Yeah.
this piece so much.
Yeah. No, I
I mean,
think you're
I
right. The
haven't, but I
block.
love it.
No, thank you so much. It means a lot to hear that. Um, but I think you're right. I think the block itself, because I spend so much time carving, um, I do value the actual blocks because they're the ones that I've spent, even though each print does take a long time, it takes about 30 minutes to do a print, but the block itself has taken me hours and hours and hours and hours to carve. So it it has a weight and a value that is different from the actual print too.
Do you spend time like being, this is just what I would do because I'm kind of wacky, but I just had this visual of like you lining up all of your blocks like a big quilt on the floor and just like laying on, laying on the floor. I mean, do you have a tactile relationship with this part of your work beyond just the rolling and the carving? Like, do you actually look at your pieces with your eyes closed ever?
Hmm. Um, I don't, but I actually have them over. I'll show you how they look like now because over the
Okay.
years they sort of fall apart. So you can see here's my selkie, and look so I'll explain. This is the selkie. I know it doesn't look anything like the first print, when I first put
And I
ink.
have that, so we'll show it in
Yeah,
we'll show
yeah,
it in
it
a few
looks
moments. Yeah.
terrible. Um,
Yeah.
when I first put the first layer, it looks beautiful because the block of linoleum is much whiter, and so there's much more of a contrast between the inked part and the non-inked. But over the years, certain parts that I carve, I don't really want, for example, this is her arm. I don't really want like all these little marks to come on her arm. And so each time I print, I might carve some more just to make sure like certain parts are cleaner. And this part, her face, so many times I painted and her face had all these marks and people would really wanted the ones where she didn't have the marks on her face. So finally I just cut out this part. So this is what it looks like now. So I mean, it's not really something that could be framed or anything.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
this
but
is
it
what
can
it
be
looks
felt.
like. Yes, it
It
can
can
be.
be felt. Okay,
Yeah.
so let me see if I can. I actually want to see if I can find that piece here. I think
Hmm.
it's coming up on the slideshow. Oh, I have to do, and first I have to do this. So I wanted to share. So, for those of you who are not familiar with CM's work or with her blog or with her website, it is truly a full experience. She tells a story. You feel very much immersed um, in the story that she is sharing with you. And this was a piece, I feel like I've only recently seen this piece, or I feel like you just shared about the bear recently.
Hmm.
But I just wanted to share with people here is a piece that she's done of a bear. And I just wanted to, this is from her blog, and I just wanted to read this really quickly. Who sits beside us as a tender present witness at every threshold, deep within our ancient and living heritages, bear returns again and again in folklore, ritual, ceremony, and legend, as a living presence in moments of transformation. Whether she appears as lover, mother, child, healer, midwife, shaman, or guide within the spell of the telling, Bear offers us her hollow den, a breathing, fluid space where psyche and nature, creature and cosmos curl together as one. Here in the enduring pulse of her wild presence, she wraps us in her warmth and fur, holding us steady as change reshapes us. So to see a piece like this and to read that, it's such a big exhale. It's just gives you such a deeper connection to the piece. And I want to talk a little bit here about, and I do want to see that Selkie piece as well, which we will. But can you talk about this process between the piece and the writing? Like, does one always come first? How are you actually journaling throughout your process? How does this process work? Because your writing is so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, and I'm so glad it sounds like you felt held by it, and that really touched me too, because that's what I hoped, and that's what it does for me too. So it benefits me from writing it, because I'm kind of writing it to feel held, especially in this particular story. Um, it turns out my neighbor died. She took her own life, and so I needed a way to deal with that grief. And so I explored different. I happened to know Sonja. I'm blanking on her name, but she wrote the wonderful book Bear and Raven, which I was inspired by. And in that book, there was a story about a young woman who had a similar fate. And so from that, I kind of generated this image, and I kind of work with the words and the image alongside each other. Sometimes they're definitely not separate. So I'll be writing my blog post as I construct the design, and I'll go back and forth between the writing and the visual, and they definitely inform each other for sure. And the writing gets me more excited about the piece. The piece also gets me excited about the writing. It's almost like they are a synergy with each other. Um, but sometimes it may not be a personal experience like this neighbor of mine. It might be something else. It might be I read a story and it inspires me. But for sure, the writing and the visual art are integral to each other in terms of my creative process.
It was very difficult to choose a piece of writing because the way that you weave your visual work and your writing together is so seamless and so beautiful that I was glad that I
Mm.
chose this because I really connected with your blog piece on the bear. So I wanted to just share a little bit of your writing. Okay, so I wanted to share this photo because is this what your studio looks like? Do you just hang all your pieces is this how you draw your pieces? Yeah.
So it used to be that yes, I have a place where I hang my pieces there, but now I don't have enough wall space to be hanging all my pieces up to dry like that. So now I just have my shelves. My shelves
Uh-huh.
you can see right over there.
Okay, yeah.
I dry
Yeah.
my pieces in uh, a spatially economic way.
This is also part of the Selkie story, right?
Yes, yes, this is
Okay.
another Selkie piece that I did.
Okay,
So
let's see if I can get to. Okay, so there's the piece that you were just sharing with us, that the piece that
yes,
now
this one.
looks like unidentifiable. Yeah, the poor remains of
Yes.
that beautiful carving.
Yeah.
um so this again, see, it's another wrapped in piece.
Mm.
And also, can you talk about this rabbit piece a little bit? So the
Mhm.
more I look at it, I didn't realize that there is an above and below aspect to this. I didn't see the rabbit on the bottom, which is sort of interesting that I didn't identify it before. But can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about this piece and the story behind it?
Yeah, so it was inspired by the archetype of the rabbit, the moon, and the goddess, that weaves itself throughout so many landscapes. I believe it originated in China, but you find that trio repeated in iconographical images as well as texts, but mostly it's the image of the three together throughout the world. And I thought, wow, this is so beautiful that something could resonate across so many cultures that are so divergent and from landscapes so far away from each other. So I wanted to create a piece that kind of captured that idea. I did, yes, it is two rabbits, one with its eyes open, one with its eyes closed, because I love how rabbits are, or hares are liminal creatures. They turn up at twilight um, to feed, and they kind of represent the ways in which they're the sort of threshold creatures and represent liminal places where boundaries are crossed, whether it's the upper world and the underworld, the unconscious and the conscious. Um, and so, yes, that the three women in the middle and how they kind of represent the cyclical nature of not only the moon but Mother Nature herself, and um, just the enduring ways in which those three things continue to resonate in stories throughout the world. So,
It's really wonderful. And what came to my mind, which this is kind of sick, this is not your drawing that represents this at all, but I was just thinking, obviously when you see women and you see the moon, I think about menstrual cycles.
mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about how, I mean, I know that they don't do this, but they used to use rabbits to determine whether or not a woman was pregnant.
Oh
Like I
my
think they would
gosh,
inject
I
the
didn't know
urine
that.
into, yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
so the pregnancy test used to be, I don't know, this is some demented stuff, and I don't know how they came up with it. And I might be totally wrong, so somebody can correct me if I am. But I think that they used to inject the urine of a woman into a rabbit if they thought she was pregnant. And if the rabbit passed away, it meant that she was.
Oh my God. Oh God, that sounds horrible.
Yeah,
I
it's
hadn't
really
heard of
horrible,
that.
but
Wow.
the only reason why I'm thinking about it here is that because this feels like, the moon feels like a whole cyclical creative process, and
hmm
just the fact that the hair of the rabbit's being brought into this, and like who would even think about doing something like that to determine pregnancy? And again, I might be wrong, but at the very least, it's a myth.
Yes.
Right. It might not be real, but at the very least, it's a myth of some
Yeah.
sick
No, that's
kind.
so true. I think maybe hares and rabbits were associated with women because of their
Fertility. Well, and
fertility.
fertility
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Okay, so this is I feel like this is the last slide I put on here, but
Okay.
I wanted to have this be the final slide because of your connection to Women Who Run with the Wolves. And this is just such an amazing piece. So do you want to talk a little bit about this? And is this it? I don't know if this is or not, but is this an earlier piece of yours?
No, it just comes right in the middle. It's a little bit of a different style in that it's a two-part.
Yeah.
So it got multiple colors, so that's different. But yeah, it was inspired by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, her book Women Who Run with the Wolves, and the story that she tells is about um, a bone woman who collects wolf bones and then sings over them until they spring back to life and run off howling with the voice of a woman. And I love that story so much because it's all about reclamation of one's own voice, of one's own instinctual nature. And um, I wanted to create a piece that captured that spirit, and also an honoring of that book because it's been such an influential book in my own life. So I created this piece, and it is a harder piece to create because of the multiple colors and the multiple layers.
I really love how it's I mean this is just my own association, but there is like a depiction of the unconscious here for me with the wolves below in this blue space. And
Ah,
then
interesting.
there's this one wolf who's like kind of halfway in between. Like the wolf that's at the top is kind of dipped down and also above. And that's obviously just my association, but it's quite beautiful.
That's fascinating. I didn't think of that it was an unconscious versus conscious symbology going on there, but you're
Yeah.
you're right.
Can you
Yes,
see it?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that's
I
it
do
feel
see it. Yes, I like that.
so I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and I just wanted to talk to you for a little bit longer about, just because I know you personally. There is, I don't know if it's a transition or not, but I'm just going to talk about what I'm aware of is that you are. beginning to or have been um, creating pieces of work around your own personal myths. And is that a new transition?
Um, I think I always have to a certain degree, but maybe where the transition is coming is I'm being more forthright, or I'm being more conscious of how I'm doing it. Yes. So in that way, I think it is becoming more clear to me how my work is about my personal stuff, and I think I hadn't been as conscious of it when I began.
I think that's so important that as with anything, when we are so moved by stories or music or movement or whatever it might be, there is, stories continue to live and stories continue to transform. And I think it's really been so touching to see you um, claiming, like in a very factual way but also mythical way, about your own history. I tried to do that in my own work too, and there's just something so brave about it. It's like moving away from, it's not moving away from, it's honoring both the self and the collective self, and how that like kind of weaves in and out all the time. So I'm hoping that that we have a future conversation where we share maybe some of your personal, I'm going to call it personal work, even though I know it's all personal, but maybe you have a better word for it than I do. But you have such a rich history that it would be so beautiful to do another segment on moving towards the work that stems from your own personal history and matriarchal line and historical line. Because I just think it's such it's like adding your hair to the cauldron.
No, thank you. I love how you named that the interweaving of the personal and collective. I think yes, I'm beginning to realize in the course of sharing my work on Instagram and online how much people do resonate with my work, even if it is personal. I think sometimes I think, oh, how would somebody relate to this? But actually, so many people do relate to ways in which I weave in my personal stuff into my blogs posts, for example, how I show why the story meant something to me. I think that's a place where people do resonate. So it's actually feels really wonderful because it feels less alone, you know, to have that.
I think also when we share our own stories, it's like when we share our own dreams, there's something where somebody will be really touched. And the reason that they're touched has everything to do with their personal history. And it's a vantage point that you never even looked at. Which is so, when I wrote my book, I did a book reading and I was like, people are just going to think this is nuts or what, I didn't really have any expectation about it. And there were three people that were in the room that were crying.
Oh,
And
wow.
I remember saying, like, thinking like, oh my gosh, I don't want people to feel sorry for me, but they weren't crying for me. They were crying for their own personal stories and being
Wow.
reflected in the way. And I think that that's so, you know, again, that's just a testament to the collective that we're all sharing.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think it's so important that we share our personal stories through myth because it's safer. So the story, actually, the myth holds us. It's also
Yes.
way more, and it's
Mm-hmm.
also more palatable for the listener. It's really
Mm-hmm.
hard to listen to somebody's story of suffering, but
Mm-hmm.
when you encapsulate it in myth, it gives people the ability to hear it and to see their own selves. And that's so important. It's an invitation. So I just so appreciate, as I've said 10 million times, this conversation, but I won't stop saying it because I am so moved by your work. And so in the show notes, first of all, is there anything else that you wanted to say?
Oh no, Stacey, I am just so honored to be here. I just feel as though you truly do see me, you see my work, and I am just touched um, to have had this conversation, to have shared with you some of my work, but also to hear what you have to say about it. And thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. So I'm going to be putting in the notes for this show how you can access the amazing stories and work that ZM shares through her Substack, through her website, through her Instagram, and I'll also link the storyteller that she had mentioned in the bear when we were talking about the bear. You'll remember. I'll watch it
Yes.
and remember
Mhm.
back. And if anybody has any questions, you can always reach out to me. And yeah, so I'm going to stop this recording right now, and then